All right. Good evening. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Women in Science Empowerment Panel, aka the WISE panel. My name is Layara Powell, and I am the recruiter for the Doctor of Pharmacy program. I thank you all for joining us. I specifically want to say thank you to our 7 amazing panelists for taking time out and for celebrating Women's History Month. Also, shout out to Dr. Nagar Swati, who was on our first panel last year. Thank you so much for joining us and wanting to support us. And to our current students, as well as prospective students, faculty and staff, thank you so much for being a part of our second WISE panel. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I want to be respectful of our time. We have tons of questions, and as I will have questions, this is also an opportunity for our guest, whether you are a current student, prospective student, someone that's already in the field, to ask questions. This is a conversation, so please join the conversation.
Hi, I'm Neela Bajanis, and I'm honored to be part of the Women in Science Empowerment panel. I'm a clinical associate professor at Temple University School of Pharmacy, where I teach about medications in patients with critical and cardiopulmonary disease states. I've been involved with various community-based outreach programs. I also serve as a clinical pharmacist in emergency medicine and critical care that works collaboratively as part of the interdisciplinary team to educate and optimize patient and transitions of care.
Hello everyone, this is Kenyatta McDonald, the Assistant Director for Research at the School of Pharmacy. I'm excited to join the WISE panel this year to tell you about my background, how I went from being a laboratory technician to an administrator in research.
My name is Tassetti Donald. I am a 2016 graduate of Temple University School of Pharmacy. After completing a PGY1 residency at Pennsylvania Hospital, I am currently a critical care pharmacist at Chester County Hospital.
Hello everyone, my name is Sonia Rowe, and I'm an International Medication Safety Management Fellow at Institute for Safe Medication Practices, or ISMP. I get to work on various projects on medication safety around the country and also across the globe.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Christina Jones. I'm an analytical chemist by training. I spent a number of years focused on human health related research. Then I transitioned into science and technology policy, where I focus on advanced manufacturing in the US. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm co-founder of a company, Facilitate to Motivate, where we work with women as well as youth to just really empower them, inspire them, and help them find success on their own terms in both their professional careers and their personal lives.
Hi, my name is Sydney Cooper. I graduated from the College of St. Elizabeth in 2020 with my Bachelor's of Science in Biology, and I also received a minor in chemistry. Once I graduated, I worked at Johnson & Johnson, where I was a CAR T manufacturer.
Hello everyone, I am Nancy Catrix, and I am the Vice President of Global Safety QA for Charles River Laboratories. Charles River is a contract research organization that provides products and services that help companies accelerate their research and drug development efforts. I have been with Charles River for 23 years and currently oversee multiple global cross-site quality assurance teams whose primary job is to ensure the GLP compliance of the work that we do. And I am super excited to be part of the Women in Science Empowerment panel.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Again, thank you so very much. I am super excited to facilitate this second annual WISE panel. I was actually sifting through some emails, and I received an email from Girls Inc. of New York City. So if you're not familiar with Girls Inc., it is a national organization that supports women, inspiring young girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And a part of that that statement, it was really encouraging young women, and this was obviously more than 20 years ago, young women such as myself in male-dominating fields such as science, math, and technology. And I never understood why it was so important to hone in on, young girls in science, in math, and technology. And here we are 20 plus years later, and it's still being a thing. And so it truly is inspiring to see such great women doing amazing work and contributing. And so a part of Women's History Month, it encouraged me last year and then again this year to celebrate and highlight women in science. So with all that being said, my first question is, why science? And you can raise your hand, and then you can go ahead, take yourself off mute, and just give us your answer. Why science? Nancy.
Well, Liara,
Kenyatta, and then Nancy.
Hi, Liara. I actually thought about this. I thought about what was my initial interest in science, and I will actually say that I'm a person that has multiple interests in many things. But I do have a funny story related to this. So I kind of had interest in science, but what really cemented my interest in science was an 8th grade trip to the Mutter Museum, which is a museum in Philadelphia, where they have, I would say, biological oddities. And this particular trip, we went as a class, and I was actually transfixed by everything I saw in that museum. I met half of the class right out screaming and vomiting in the street. But for me, it was a total wonderful experience because I went from each thing. So there is in this particular museum a skeleton of a really large person and a dwarf next to each other. There are different skulls and things like that. And it just made me question why. Like, why did this happen? What happened to these people? Like, what were the outcomes? What happened to them? And just thinking scientifically about it, what could doctors do to help these people? It just really started drawing my interest in science more, making me think about science more. And eventually I actually started traveling down the road to becoming interested in science. And when I went to Temple, I have my undergraduate in biology. It really, really cemented my interest in science and maybe choose it as a career path.
Thank you. Nancy?
Sure. So I love that museum. I've been to it multiple times. I actually wanted to have my wedding reception there because I loved it so much, but I don't know that my mother would have been too thrilled about that, but it's a very cool museum. So when I think back to when I first became interested in science, it was really just going through school and not like loving history or loving different subjects, but science just always really worked for me. And just being able to be in the lab and do dissections and get my hands dirty, that was kind of what sold me on it for sure.
Anyone else would like to chime in on why science? Tassetti?
So I think my story about my interest in science is a little bit different than Nancy and Kenyatta. For me, it was because it was challenging. It was something that I actually struggled with. And it's like I excelled in reading and history and all of the other subjects, but science was something that I really had to work for. And I think because I thought it was a challenge, I said, okay, I can do this. I can rock this. Physics, chemistry, OChem, I'm going to do it. Now, once I got to college, it was a rude awakening that I needed, a little bit more help than I did in high school. But I think ultimately it was because, you have a lot of people along the way saying, science, like you're not going to pass that physics class, you're not going to pass that biology class. And then just being able to, rock it, those were those moments that really kind of stuck with me. And I really think it was simply because it was a challenge and it was something that I had to work for.
Go ahead, Christina. Wait, one before you go, it's so funny because I was speaking to a student. I was just like, I love science, but there were certain science courses that was kicking my tail. And it also pushed me to kind of deviate a little bit from being a biology major to being a health science major. And I commend those that have stuck with it. But it was just funny that you mentioned that, although it was difficult, you still stuck with it. And for me, it was difficult, but I found a way to pivot. Go ahead, Christina.
I had friends that were struggling with that same battle and ended up pivoting. So for me, again, slightly different story. I've always had an interest in science, and it was kind of like the demos that you do with kids. I think the silly putty one, or making slime, was like very intriguing for me. It piqued my interest. But I also wanted to be a lawyer, and I also wanted to own a record label, right? I had like all of these other interests. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I was growing up with Master P and The Limit were like a huge thing, and seeing that from my city, right? I was just like, ooh, how do I get in the music business? And so, but what happened when I started middle school, within a month or two, my mom was hospitalized for 2 weeks. And she was in ICU that first week. They struggled to figure out what was going on with her, right? And so I was just like, how do doctors know what they know? And I want to be on the other end of that. I want to be one of the people that's like creating that knowledge for them. And so what I didn't know then was that that's a researcher, right? And so eventually at some point in high school, that clicked from teachers. My chemistry teacher and my physics teacher were the two that really talked to me about that. And I'm just like, oh, I think you're interested in research. You may be good at it. And then I started undergrad at Louisiana State University, and a professor there, I don't know, saw something in me, became a mentor. And same thing, he's just like, oh, you want to do human health stuff? You don't need to major in biology. You can do chemistry. And chemistry was hard, but I stuck with it. It stuck through all of the classes. But it was because of the research and knowing that, oh, I can do human health research. I was doing pharmaceutical related research. I got to intern. Like those were the things that kind of like kept me going, even though the class and courses were really difficult at times.
Thank you. Diving down the road of mentorship, and I'm now going to bring this to Neela. So in terms of mentorship, what did mentorship look like to you as you were navigating your path through science and to where you are now?
So I made a lot of pivots throughout. So I always loved science. I think that, when I was born, I had a tattoo that says, I love science. My parents were like, we don't know her name, but we know that she loves science. Like always loved it. But then it was deciding like, what did I want to do within the science field? So I think mentorship really helped in terms of just like understanding and feeling like, just going through and like feeling confident in terms of like what I really liked. But I have to say, just until recently, so I've had a couple mentors that have made dramatic impacts in my life, and I'm here today because of them and their support. But I have to say, like, I recently got a female mentor, and so and I've had wonderful, wonderful mentors, but that just kind of opened my eyes to kind of see all the opportunities out there and some of the opportunities that I just kind of put to the side. So I think mentorship's huge, and that's why like I'm very passionate about giving back. And also I was so lucky to have great role models and mentors that I want to provide that mentorship also. And I think that's so important to like have those mentors to go to, someone you could always count on, and someone that's looking at it from a different lens or angle.
Thank you. Sunny?
So I come from actually a family of educators. I'm the first one in my family to pursue science. I'm an immigrant. I came to America when I was 10. So it was really important for me to have mentors and people to look up to and people to get advice from, just navigating the new country, a new profession. I was also a special education math teacher before I was a pharmacist. So even switching from that was obviously a big jump, a big pivot. And I think along the way, I've had a lot of mentors, really impactful. Even Dr. Vajandas, Neela here was one of my mentors, I would say. Something that I learned about mentorship is that I think when you're on a path, like let's say you're a student and you're all kind of working towards the same goal, and I think it's almost easier to take advice from mentors because again, like you're working toward the same goal, you're on the same path as everybody else. But I think once you kind of start trying to get out of the mold and do something different for yourself, maybe break the glass ceiling, I think it's important to discern what advice really works for you based on your background, based on where you came from, your values, your goals, your personality, and really take mentors who understand that and align with that So I think that's a lesson that I learned along the way, that I just can't take all this advice and all these mentorship that are offered to me, but really just kind of match it to what I need, where I see myself, what I've experienced when I stand by. So I think that's what I would tell the people here, and I guess that's something that I learned about mentorship along the way.
Sydney, being one of or the youngest panelist, and I'm super excited. I have watched Sydney grow both academically and socially as one of our student ambassadors at the College of St. Elizabeth, now St. Elizabeth University. Why and how has mentorship been important to you, and how has it played a role with you transitioning from St. Elizabeth?
For me, mentorship has been very important, especially going from fresh out of college into working. When I was in St. Elizabeth, I had participated in the Tri Beta Honor Society, where I actually gained two mentors from Novartis. And that kind of helped shape me in a way of trying to navigate where in the science field do I see myself, because it's gigantic. You kind of never know where you want to go into until you speak to different people from different parts. So that was like being able to speak to more than just, my professors and those who are around me, people who are in the field doing different things. It's helped me narrow my idea of what I am interested in and what I don't personally want to do anymore.
So another question, throwing it out there. In the roles that you all serve, what do you love about it? And what is the thing that you would like to change? Now, if there's any supervisors on this call, please don't hold that against the folks here. This is an honest, open conversation. But there's things that we love about our roles. And there's roles that we're just like, or portions of the roles that we wish we can change. And that is okay. And I think that helps us as women to advocate for ourselves. But it also will in turn encourage those that are on this call to be able to advocate for themselves as well. Going in order, Nancy, Tassetti, then Sydney.
So there's so many things that I love about my role, and I think I've had a lot of opportunities afforded to me with my company, because they really make it so that you can own your career, right? So you can see something you want to do and you can make it happen, and you don't have to have a certain background or a certain requirement. Showing the initiative and taking on that challenge and really owning it is really what's been really super cool for me. Being able to work across multiple sites, learn about different cultures, give people perspectives on different ways of doing things. I mean, it's so fun, and I was just able to go, now that some of the travel restrictions have lifted, I was able to go visit my site out in Reno, Nevada last week, and just getting back and talking to some of my younger team members that joined that I hadn't met yet. They're just so passionate and there's so much energy, and it's just great to be able to go and talk to them. Speaking of mentorship, being able to talk to them and encourage them and get their ideas and empower them to make change happen. And it's so invigorating to be able to do that. If I could change something, I'm always changing things. I'm one of those weird people that like change. Not taxes, but change. I do love change. And I guess if I could change something, one of my biggest passions, at this stage in my career is people, and I've got a normal job to do, but it's also for me about developing my team and my people. And my company has really kind of changed gears and really gets that now, right? Where 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that wasn't always the case, but now it is, which is really cool. And if I could change something, it would be to make it so that all people leaders understood their role as a people leader and what it means to be a people leader. And we're getting there, but I always want it to go faster. And I think that's what's the biggest thing right now that I'm looking forward to helping my organization change.
One of the things that I really love about my job at Chester County Hospital is that I wanted to work on a multidisciplinary team. I see that Ms. Hankins is on here, and she knows that I would always be in her office talking about what I was going to do when I graduated and what I wanted to work with the doctors and the respiratory therapists and the nurse practitioners. And that was something that was really, really important to me. And so literally every single day I work with this really tight knit critical care team, and I really like it. And, you know, it's to the point where like they won't even start rounds if I'm not there. And so, which was not the case when I first got there. You know, we definitely developed our pharmacy program, have developed our pharmacy program over the years, but it is just so cool to see pharmacy so embedded with these other clinical services. So that has just been something that I have really, really thoroughly enjoyed about my job. But on the flip side of that, because you're so involved and because Penn Medicine and Chester County Hospital specifically is so pharmacy friendly, they want pharmacists on every single committee, on every single program, on every single thing. And so it has been wonderful to have opportunity to be on different committees and, you know, in different meetings and being asked to speak and so on and so forth. But it's just like, there's just not enough time in the day for me to do the clinical work, but then also do some of the administrative things that we have. And we recently started a residency program. And so now, as I'm, you know, getting comfortable and feeling very confident in being a critical care pharmacist, now there's a learning curve on how to be a preceptor. And so it's just like, I wish there was more time in the day to really kind of delve into all the things, all the clinical things that they would like us to do. So that would be the only thing that I would change.
I think in my previous role, something that I would change is more understanding. I previously worked as a CAR T manufacturer. For those who don't know, CAR T is chimeric antigen receptor therapy, which is a speeding field right now in gene therapy and cell therapy. And with that, there's many companies racing to have their product out to make sure that they can help as many people with this new type of therapy. And it's amazing. However, in the same sense, especially starting where I worked in the pandemic, it was a bit tough on the understanding part where you're doing your best to help progress the company. However, there's deadlines that sometimes we can't meet. And I wish there was more understanding on the front of, you know, this is a growing technology and there's limited resources, there's limited people, and to treat it as though like we do know what we're doing to work as well. And having that understanding to bring across, like, we know, we see what you're going through, we see what's going on, we hear you. I think that would be important, not just where I was at previously, but, you know, everywhere.
With that being said, I think, you know, as women, or if you're a mom and, you know, just working, you kind of get in this pickle of how do I balance, or is there a balance? So, you know, what has that looked like for you, for anyone? And this is, you know, I always throw it out there and then I'll then pinpoint specific folks, but this will be for everyone or anyone that wants to answer. What has that looked like for you? How was it an option for you to say no? Did you feel that you had an opportunity to say no, or I couldn't do? And if so, how did that make you feel? How did you navigate those feelings? I see everyone thinking because it's sensitive, but it's a real thing. And sometimes we may not talk about it. And I think in fear of maybe looking less than, feeling less than. So, you know, I'm always intrigued to know what others feel and think along those lines. Nancy, Tassetsi, Danila.
Yeah, so that's a tough one, and it is a little bit uncomfortable, right? When you start thinking about it. But you know, I was, you know, definitely in the throes of my career when I had my children. You know, was in a pretty, you know, high up responsible role for my site at the time, and it was almost like, I hate to say it, but almost like I was nervous about telling my boss, "Oh, I'm pregnant," you know, and that was like a thing, right? Like, because then you're going to be, oh, well, how long are you going to be out, and are you going to come back, and all that stuff. So it's definitely it's a bit intimidating, and it was obviously much younger then at the time. So and things have definitely, I think, progressed in the right direction now. Back then, like men taking leave for the birth of a child wasn't a thing. And that is a thing now, which I think is super cool. And to get that support, but it's hard, and it was, I was always the one that, was rushing out the door to get to daycare to pick up the kids by 6 o'clock. So you didn't get charged that $5 in cash per minute that you're late. From that time pickup. So it's definitely, you definitely, I think, feel more of that weight on your shoulders as a female. And for me, what I do and try to do for my team is try to hopefully make it so that they don't feel that way, that they feel that empowered to do what they need to do and be flexible. And I've seen that change a lot, at least in my workplace, I'd say over the past 10 years, especially. So, which is good stuff. So.
I think coming from the perspective as I shouldn't say a recent grad, but when I initially graduated and started working at Chester County Hospital, it was nerve-wracking to me how many projects were coming my way, how many meetings and things, and where I was supposed to be. And I felt completely intimidated, to Nancy's point, to say no. And so in turn, what happened, it was just, I was burning, what's the saying? I was burning both ends. I'm trying to do all of these things at home and at work, and it really just became too much. And so finally, I think it was during my first eval with my supervisor where I finally said, I cannot be on this committee anymore. I can't sign up for this meeting. And he was just like, oh, like, why didn't you just tell me? And I just felt really silly because I was just really putting so much stress on myself, and it never occurred to me to just say no, because I'm thinking I'm a new grad. I want to show that I'm a team player, that I can do all of these things, and that I'm capable of doing all these things, but I wasn't able to give all of the things 100%. And so I think it took me some time to be comfortable in saying no, but now my boss actually emailed me earlier today about sitting on another committee, and I said, well, we need to have a meeting so we can talk this through, because if it is not something that I'm able to give 100%, I cannot do it. And so I think just getting comfortable with that has made things so much easier, but I definitely think it was a learning curve because I was fearful that it was going to look bad, that I wasn't able to handle this amount of work. While my male counterparts, people, they were just saying no left and right. And I just didn't understand it. And there was never any backlash, and there was no backlash to me personally or anyone. But I think I just wasn't sure how that was going to look. And so I think it's definitely a hard balance. I don't have children, but I definitely think that, it is still a hard balance, trying to do your job and trying to do things in your personal life. And I think work-life balance is definitely something that is unique to everyone, and it looks different for everyone. And I think that is also something that I had to understand and realize, that it's going to look different for everyone, and you cannot compare your situation to someone else. Like, just because my coworker can do X, Y, and Z, maybe I can do that, but it's just going to look a little different, and that's completely okay.
Neela, then Christina.
Sure. So I wanted to kind of echo what Tassetti said, and then also Swati's chat, where it says, I have to agree that women, especially minority women, have to learn to say no more often without apologizing, because there can be just too many demands on one's time. So I echo that completely. It took me a little bit of a learning curve to recognize it, and I'm still working on it, but it's so important to, like, one, I feel like, at least for me, it was just knowing that you're in enough and that it's okay to say no, because you know what your limits are. You also know that if you're spread too thin, you're not going to deliver to what you want to, or know that you can, in terms of those aspects. So in terms of Tassetti, I was also in the ICU as well at Temple University Hospital. And And that's like, so, you know what I mean? And the same things happened. It was great relationship with the team. Then I came over and they wanted me on every committee, wouldn't start rounds until I was there, which means we'd take care, like we'd go around and like assess each patient. And then I came over to the School of Pharmacy, and then we had those additional responsibilities of teaching and things like that. And then just knowing where your passions are and what your priorities are, keeping the blinders on, not looking to see what everyone else is doing in their lane, because we're unique. And I think that's what's so great and what we bring to the table. So again, knowing to say no is just, and I had to create a phrase at the very beginning, but then going back. And if there was discussion, inviting people for that discussion to say like, okay, if this needs to be done, like this is the time I have, like help me come up with a plan. And really being assertive with it. But then in the end of the day, I'm a caffeine drinker. So I'll bring your visual to the coffee cup, but like you need to fill up that cup, right? So you can keep giving. And ultimately I want to give to my students and learners and patients. So that's what's most important to me.
Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, echoing, yes, it also took me a while to be comfortable saying no, and then realizing in that saying no, it's well, let's have a conversation about it. That took a number of years, but just thinking about work-life balance in general, one thing I just wanted to add was that it's important to understand how you work, because as everyone has said, work-life balance, it's a very unique thing. But then it's sometimes difficult to figure that out. So for me, grad school and going through that process was really where I figured out how I like to work. I am not a person that shows up at 8 a.m. That's not me. And even if I do, I can't give you me at 8 a.m., right? I still need time to ease into my day. No early morning meetings, especially on a Monday or Friday, right? Like I like having flexibility. Can I telework if it's something that I don't need to be, present for, right? And so learning that about myself in grad school definitely helped, because it went into, okay, well, when I'm looking at jobs, asking the questions about what kind of environment do you have? What sort of flexibilities do you offer, right? And how can you accommodate my working style when and if needed? And people were very open to that, right? Like, oh, we're fine. If you have to take off, work later, So, just having those conversations up front can be helpful when it comes to your work-life balance.
Swati had also put in the chat, and just being a woman makes us a minority in STEM fields are so often. And it's crazy that, and when we started, I was speaking about, Girls Inc. And it was like this push of women in science, women in math, and, and I didn't recognize, my 12-year-old brain didn't recognize, well, I get it, we women, we doing science. I didn't realize, what's the big deal? We love science, we're girls. So what? And so here we are 20 years later, well, over 20 years later, but recognizing that it is still a thing, and how much, yes, we have grown, but it's still so much growth that needs to take place. And then Neela put, saying no is not a weakness, but makes you stronger. And I know I had to learn that in previous roles of understanding, just because I'm saying no, it doesn't mean I'm saying no. I may be saying not right now. I may be saying because I can't give my best right now. And I think those things are important to learn about yourself, and to be able to advocate for yourself. Sunny, you wanted to chime in, go ahead.
Yes, just quickly, I want to add that your worth isn't defined by productivity. So for somebody like me who was just constantly giving when I was a student and the class president, just advocating for everybody, and then going into PGY1 residency where it was working nights and weekends and just having that line completely blurred into remote work. Now I'm working at home 9 to 5. It was actually a really big transition, a bigger challenge than I expected. And at the end of the day, I make a list of what I want to accomplish for that day, and I stick by it. And I think as women, you just have to realize, and for me personally, your worth isn't defined by what you produce, by external factors, but at the end of the day, that's a definition and a standard that you set for yourself.
So Neela, you put in saying no also gives you the opportunity to say yes to something that aligns more with your priorities and that you are passionate about. So with that being said, I want to know what has been, the one thing that you've contributed to the field of science that you've been super passionate about. And that can be in your current role or previous role, because you all have contributed and you all continue to contribute. And so, in the spirit of celebrating Women's History Month, many folks may not know what you have done. And sometimes we kind of get, well, I don't want to talk about what I do, but who else is going to talk about what you do? So this is the space to talk about what you do, and to share and highlight the amazing things that you have brought to this amazing, broad, dynamic field. We'll kick it off with Sunny, and then you guys can pop in, raise your hand, and we'll go from there.
That's a tough question. So I would say, I think my definition of my accomplishment and my contributions, what I'm most proud of, really definitely changes over the years based on the stage in my career or what I'm going through at that time. I think earlier, when I was younger, it was more like accomplishment based. Oh, I did something really big and impacted a lot of people. But I think recently, now that I'm in the medication safety field with ISMP, I think it's become more of the impact in terms of touching people's lives, as basically when it comes down to education and advocacy. And I think it's funny because it goes in full circle with what I started as a special education teacher in Baltimore, which was education and advocacy. I come from a family of all teachers, like my dad, my mom, my brother, and I've all taught. And I would say with medication safety, there's a lot of emotions involved. We deal with medication errors. Obviously, when errors happen, it's not something you expect. It's not something that you wanted to happen. Sometimes it can cause real harm. And there's a lot of times there's a lot of emotions attached to it. Like when we talk about vaccine errors with COVID, I think everybody can attest to how much emotion that carries and how everybody gets so passionate and like people think they're like the experts when it comes to COVID vaccine. So I would say when it comes to my contribution, what I'm most proud of, I think it's just continuing to just speak voice, voice what I've gone through, voice for other people, be advocates for those who don't have a voice, and just continue to educate. And I think right now at this stage, I would say, I know I'm being super vague, but I would say, I think out of all, I think it's the potential to touch as many lives as I really can with ISMP's potential opportunities to educate and advocate for others.
Go ahead, Nancy, and then Kenyatta, I'm coming over to you.
So when I was just as you were speaking, Sunny, it made me think about reflecting back to my role previous to the one that I'm in now, same company, but was more on the scientific ends of reproductive and developmental toxicology studies. So being a contract research organization, firms would hire us to do this testing for them. And I really, as I worked at the first site I was at in Horsham, really learned about the thalidomide disaster. And how thalidomide was not approved in the U.S. And it's a medication that was originally given to women to help their nausea problems during pregnancy, and it was actually shown to cause birth defects. And what's really interesting about that is that when you do a developmental toxicology study, so you're looking at does the medicine impact the developing fetus, and if you do that study in a rat, you will see that the pups from that rat are fine. However, if you do that same study in a rabbit, you will find that those pups are not okay, and they mimic the same malformations that we saw in humans. So having the opportunity to work on studies for clients where we were making sure that the drug that they wanted to approve was safe for developing babies. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, it was just so I mean, there was lots of other stuff to do with, fertility and development, but I mean, those studies for me as a scientist, like I was responsible for that, was like, it was pretty darn cool, I must say. So it's neat stuff.
What I would like to say is my background, I started out as a laboratory technician when I first graduated from Temple with an undergraduate degree in biology. Actually, my first job was at Temple Hospital, where I worked in the medical laboratory on the second floor of the hospital. And then from there, I moved on to CHOP. And when I worked at CHOP, I worked there for 11 years. And the first job I had was as a laboratory technician in a laboratory of Dr. Paul Offit, who is one of the inventors of the rotavirus vaccine. And my job was to work on the second phase of this FDA-approved rotavirus vaccine. And what happened is the virus would be microencapsulated, and then it was my job to, inoculate mice and give it to them, and and work on that. So I was actually very proud that I was a part of that study, the initial studies that were going on at CHOP at that time, and the trial itself was going through clinical trials in Africa so that this vaccine could come to market, and eventually did. So I am very happy with that work and to be a part of that. And I think right now in my current role, actually also at CHOP, I was a project manager in a clinical trial. And that was my job after I finished as a laboratory technician with Dr. Offit. And in that position, running a clinical trial, you actually are managing the trial and the patients and the study. And then half of that becomes administration. And it kind of led me into this progression I am now, working as administrator, because you get into the weeds of, finance and payroll and all those things. And so my career projection has kind of led that way. So what I do now, like here at Temple as the assistant director of research, and what I have done is work with the faculty on their grants and grant submissions and doing those sorts of things. But what I really feel about it is, although I'm helping them with the administration, what I do is allow the scientists to be scientists. And I feel that no matter what role we're serving in this field, that we're always going towards or hoping that we're having an impact on the future of someone, that we're able to cure a disease, or there's going to be a better outcome in the future for someone. So I feel like, I help contribute to that by having the scientists focus on their work, to help them along the way. If I can help, as Leora has heard, since we share office space, if you're not aware, and we have a wall that's not all the way going to the top. So she hears me over here and I hear her over there. So some of the things I do, I even sit and help or edit some of the protocols and read some of the research plans of the scientists so they can actually apply for these grants and get them. I just find that I really enjoy what I do, and I feel like in the end, it just contributes to a future or better future for someone and a better outcome for someone. And I think that's very impactful.
Thank you, Kenyatta. Christina, I'm going to have you go. Neela, you had your hand up, but it went back down. Just want to know if you want to chime in before Tasati. So if so, just put your hand back up and you can go after her.
It is very appreciated. Kenyatta speaking as one of those researchers before I pivoted. And so Nancy brought me back, though. It was full circle. So when I first started research as a freshman in undergrad, it was inspired by the thalidomide tragedy, right? So yes, thalidomide is two enantiomers, are just mirror molecules, and it's one that causes the bad effects that we're seeing or that happened. And so my work was essentially developing techniques to separate enantiomers in some pharmaceutical compounds of interest. So yeah, everything, right? Every post I presented or presentation I gave during the first couple of years of undergrad, it's always just like, oh, have you heard of thalidomide? So yeah, I hadn't heard of it. I thought about it in years. But Sunny said something that was key to me. what I find to be impactful are the things that I look back at and I'm really, really proud of. They have changed throughout the course of my career. And the first thing that I think of is when I was in grad school, a lot of my work involved looking at molecules involved in our metabolism, so metabolites, and seeing what can they tell us about disease. And if we can use them as biomarkers of any sort. And so ovarian cancer was one that I did a lot of work with. And one of the papers that we published, we had patients reach out to us just to say how, their physician told them about the work and they just wanted to say, it was needed and what the impact could potentially be. So as a student being involved with something like this, like to know that, we got a call from patients, more than one about this work. It was mind blowing. I cried at one point because I was just like, whoa, this is really, it has the potential to do a lot more than what I'm thinking. And again, that's one of the key drivers for me. More recently, I transitioned into science and technology policy. And a big part of what my office does is trying to tell the public about advanced manufacturing, right? So this is innovation in biopharmaceutical manufacturing. When you think of 3D printing and additive manufacturing, flexible electronics, robotics, all of these kind of things, we have these huge innovation centers throughout the country. And there's so many jobs that aren't filled, right? And so how do we just get the word out about our programs, about the programs of these huge institutes, and get more people trained so that they can take on these jobs? That's been really, really great, like seeing the stories now, success stories of veterans, other people that have just been displaced by the pandemic, looking for new work, just coming in, doing some of these hybrid programs and being able to find employment that works for them. It's been just really great, happy stories over the past few months. And so that is something that I'm definitely proud of.
Well, first, let me say, you ladies are impressive, okay? Very impressive. So I just wanted to say that. I think for me, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I think this also echoes to Sunny, was during pharmacy school, I was really involved in SNAFA. And for any of the current students or prospective students, please join SNAFA. It's an amazing organization. But I just wanted to say that there were many, many times when we would do community events. And you would have these young ladies and men in Philly who said they never knew a Black woman, let alone a Black person, could be a pharmacist. And so that was something that was so humbling to me. And and Dr. Gorenstein is in here. When I was struggling taking those Medkin exams, remembering those little kids telling me they had never seen someone be a pharmacist, that to me is something that still sticks with me. And even in my current job, to work so closely with the critical care team and them understanding that being a pharmacist is not just limited to retail pharmacy. And there's nothing wrong with being a retail pharmacist at all. They are the backbone. But I think is anytime I have an opportunity to speak about being a pharmacist and what that means and how I do it in the different areas, that is just so impactful to me. And being able to go out into the community and tell other young girls who look like me that don't be discouraged if you didn't pass your physics class or if you didn't pass your organic chemistry class, that there are resources and people out there and a support system for you, that you can get through those hard classes. And that if you want, to work where Nancy works or Christina works or Kenyatta or Sydney or Swati or Sunny, that you can do it. Because there are people who look like you and may not have the same background as you, but understanding, to Swati's point, how important representation is. And so I think that I've had the opportunity to do some really cool things, but to me, being able to have those conversations and just to let a little girl who looks like me know that she can do it and even do something even cooler than what I'm doing, and that's possible. So that is something that has been really important for me and what really keeps me
going. That was amazing. I agree 100%. I'm shaking a little bit because I 100% agree with that. And then in addition to what everyone else said is amazing. I still remember my community pharmacy days looking at the thalidomide box with dust on it. And now I know
Obviously I knew why, but this is amazing, amazing that you guys had something to like do with that as well. So for me, I guess like my contribution would be just creating opportunities for future pharmacists and for future women. So every place since I've started working as a pharmacist, I've tried to create that. So back at in my Rite Aid days, I created 2 spots they didn't really know what medication therapy management was, but it was something that I just stepped out of my comfort zone, started to try, and then I kind of moved on to something else. And then when I came over to Temple, like some outpatient clinics, like a lung transplant clinic pharmacist, they got a position. We got another position for an emergency medicine pharmacist, transition of care pharmacist position, and endocrine clinic patient. So I tried to like create those, but then that was like on a local level. And I wanted to do something more on a state level. So then kind of, again, creating those opportunities for other people, making more positions open, kind of what all of you guys said, like maybe having someone come in and, you know, raise it even higher, and just support one another. So like creating working with legislative to have more collaborative practice agreements and things like that. And now working at like a national level. So those are the things, but then also working with all the students and supporting them, and now like seeing where everybody else is and just knowing I was part of a team to help like support that, I think would probably be one of my greatest achievements.
Thank you. So I think when we get older, we kind of stop dreaming, we kind of stop reaching, and we just work with what we got. So what would be something that you want to reach for, or, you know, that you still want to obtain? And I'm going to have Sydney start us off.
So something that I'm still reaching for and trying to obtain is figure out what part of science I do see myself in. I think coming from school and trying a couple different aspects of it, I don't want to completely end my relationship with science. I still love that. That's what I grew into. But I'm still figuring out where do I belong. And I think that's something that I'm spending a lot more time on focusing, especially right now, where what is my relationship with science and how do I see myself continuing it?
Anybody else want to chime in? So my next question, Nancy, go ahead, Nancy.
Sorry, I was just thinking it's
No,
funny.
it's okay.
Because
I tried not to have so for the audience, they did not know any questions that I was going to ask. And so you all have been top notch with your responses. So thank you so much.
Pivoting.
But the pivot
away.
Game is real. So pivot away. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Nancy.
So I actually decided probably about 9 months ago to go back to school. So I guess my comment would be never stop thinking about where you can continue to grow, no matter what stage you are in your career. You know, all of my schooling through Delaware Valley University as well as Temple University has been in the science fields. And a lot of what I do now is people management and leadership. So I'm back in school getting my another master's in executive management and leadership. And it's funny because people are like, why are you going back to school? And I'm like, I don't know. It was, something to do, something, different and learning. And my kids think I'm crazy because they're like, what do you mean? Like they just want to be done with school. So they don't understand that concept. But I'd say never stop learning.
I think to echo Nancy's point, sorry, Kenyatta.
I was gonna say something I'm trying to obtain is to still have fun. I mean, seriously, I know that's kind of a lighthearted answer, but what I think about is, I guess if I describe myself, I kind of have a big personality. I laugh a lot. If you hear someone laughing around a pharmacy school, that's probably me, like 65% of the time or so. I like to try to let my light shine through, but I always keep wanting aspiring to whatever I'm doing, in I guess leadership and science and filling my role is to continue to have fun at it, continue to keep the passion going, continue to think about how can I strive the next day to make sure when I come into work or when I'm working with everyone is to just have a good overall wonderful experience every day. So that's really what I strive to. And I hope, of course, I can always keep that going, 5 years from now and 10 years from now in whatever role I'm serving.
Go ahead, Tassetti.
I was just going to say that I love science. I love being a pharmacist, but I also understand that I have other passions. And I think just realizing or pivoting into the community setting and how can I either use my pharmacy degree to get back into the community setting, in some type of leadership role or doing some type of community service, or, do I need to go back to school? I've really been interested in urban health since moving to Philly. So just really understanding that it's okay to have multiple passions. And sometimes those passions don't necessarily have anything to do with the other. And so I think that was a learning curve for me, because I'm like, well, how do these things need to merge, and can I do both? And it's like, well, maybe I can do both, but they don't necessarily need to be intertwined.
And as we conclude the second annual Women in Science Empowerment Panel, I can't, my cheeks hurt from smiling so much because you all just are truly inspiring. The work that you do, the passion that you do it with, and taking the time out to share your stories with us and be transparent, but also have fun at the same time. But with that being said, I always like for my panelists to drop some gems, whether it's for their younger selves or for those that are on this panel or attending the panel, navigating their own. So what would be, something that you would tell your younger self navigating this journey, whether it be academically or outside of it, and how, can you share that to inspire and empower those that have decided to attend today? Go ahead, Sydney.
I would tell anyone, and including my younger self, if it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right, and you need to stop while you're ahead. I think that's very important, because normally we're like, oh, I can force myself through it, and you don't have to, because there's always going to be something else better for you. You just have to stop trying to put a circle peg into a square hole.
Girl, you make me so proud. Oh my gosh. Go ahead, Nancy.
I would probably have to say, don't ever think that you can't do it. Figure out a way to make it so that you can do it.
I like that. Tassetti?
I would say give yourself grace. Everything is not going to happen maybe at the timeline that you want it to happen. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes the universe is just doing its thing, and just give yourself grace and just be patient with yourself. And don't be so hard on yourself.
Thank you. Neela?
I would say you've got this. So being confident and comfortable and knowing that you've got the tools and things to figure out like what you want, but also not being afraid to set like out of your comfort levels or your zone, and just enjoying the journey, because you might end up in a much bigger, brighter space than you originally thought. So you've got this.
Christina?
Always celebrate the successes, no matter how small. I think a lot of times we're just, you autopilot and moving through, and just don't take those moments to breathe and really take things in, and just say, you know what, this was a great day, this was a good feat, this was a great impact, whatever. Like, let me go celebrate with the people that care about me, with my, my crew. So yeah.
I like that. Sunny?
I echo what Neela said about just having fun and enjoying yourself. I think passion and speaks a lot and just speaks volumes in itself. And I think it can do a lot to inspire others, and even just having people find relevance to what you went through and finding comfort in that. And it's contagious. So have fun and be passionate.
Happy Women's History Month, ladies. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I do want to read a message from Cynthia Rivera. As a woman currently in the midst of her studies and trying to figure out what I want to do after graduation, I must say this is so inspiring. And I just wanted to say thank you all for paving the way. Thank you for being so open and honest. Thank you for all of your advice as well. Thank you, Swati. And I really hope you understand how impactful, how inspiring, and how you really, regardless of if no one tells you, you are a light for those that you come in contact with. Sometimes we allow others to dim our light, but whether or not you have been told or you don't believe it, this in itself shows just in the Zoom space how inspiring and empowering that you ladies are. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate you being a part of the second annual Women in Science Empowerment Panel. And as I tell my students, be great because you are great. And that goes for you all as well. Thank you so much. Good night.
Mommy.
Oh. Oh, thanks, baby. I love you.
Mwah.
Mwah. See you guys. Thank you, ladies.
That was a good surprise.